movie buster, film connoisseurs? It is your self-proclaimed cinema shogun here, and it's been nearly a month since I first reported that Scarlett Johansson was suing Disney over a contract dispute over the release of Black Widow on Disney Plus, which resulted in her losing up to $50 million. Now, ever since that point, both sides have been sending shots back and forth, with both sides getting pretty disrespectful, and it's gotten ugly. But one of the main things I think we've all been questioning over this past month is where is Scarlett Johansson's Avenger co-stars? Usually, when one of the Avenger stars is in the limelight and it's getting a lot of heat, usually the other Avenger stars step up to have their back in the media. You know, to say a few encouraging words to them and let them know that they're not alone in this. We've seen this happen several times with people from Chris Pratt all the way to Mark Ruffalo. So we've been wondering this whole time, like, who's going to step up and say something? Because no one has said anything. Now, we know a couple of other people, like Emily Blunt, stepped up, and we were wondering if she was going to sue Disney as well, and that's still to be determined. But it looks like someone has finally broke the silence. No other than Scarlet Witch herself, Elizabeth Olsen, supposedly has stepped up in support of Scarlett Johansson. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and hop right into this little news article, and then I'll give you my thoughts and everything, and my opinion as to how everything is going. This comes to us from Fox Business. Elizabeth Olsen supports Scarlett Johansson as fellow Marvel star battles Disney in court. Scarlett Johansson's Marvel co-star and fellow Avenger, Elizabeth Olsen, spoke out in support of her amid her lawsuit with Disney. The Black Widow star, 36, filed a lawsuit in July in Los Angeles Superior Court, alleging that Disney breached her contract when the media company simultaneously released the superhero film on both Disney Plus and in theaters. Johansson says in the suit that her contract guaranteed exclusive theatrical release of the film, and a large part of her salary hinged on the film having successful ticket sales, which were diminished after the company offered the film to customers on a streaming platform. Speaking to Vanity Fair alongside Jason Sudeikis, Olsen was asked about her Avengers Endgame co-star and whether or not she's worried for her. Olsen noted that she is not worried about Johansson, but fears for what disputes like the one she's having with Disney will mean for smaller filmmakers. And here's her quote. "I'm worried about a bunch of things. Not worried on Scarlett's behalf," Olsen explained, "but I'm worried about small movies getting the opportunity to be seen in theaters. That was already a thing pre-Beer Bug. I like going to the movies, and I don't necessarily want to see only an Oscar contender or a blockbuster. I would like to see art films and art house theaters, and so I do worry about that, and people having to keep these theaters alive." Okay, so right here from this quote, I'm just going to give you my quick opinion. This looks kind of like she's kind of dodging the question here. So if she was asked about Scarlett Johansson and this is what she had to say, I'm not worried on Scarlett's behalf, I don't know if that's supposed to be like a women empowering thing, like, oh, Scarlett can handle herself, you know, Scarlett Johansson can handle herself, so I'm not really worried about her. Or if it was more of a thing like, oh, I'm dodging this question, so I'm not really worried about that, but let's bring the focus to small movies and smaller theaters and this, that, and the third. So yeah, I felt like this is kind of dodgy, so I don't really feel like this is really stepping up in defense of Scarlett Johansson, at least from this part of the quote. To me, this seems a little bit dodgy, and it's kind of like a deflection onto something else. Although it is a deflection onto something that I agree with. Like, I agree. I want to see other movies besides just Oscar contenders and blockbusters in theaters. I agree that streaming services are hurting, you know, movies. I agree with all of that, but it's kind of like, that's not what he asked you about. He asked you about Scarlett Johansson, and then you kind of just deflected. But let's go further into the article. Indeed, there is concern among theater companies that have been impacted hard by the closures and restrictions brought on by the beer bug, prompting many to wonder if the future of new releases lies in streaming rather than the traditional trip to the theater. But when it comes to actors and their earnings, I mean, that's just all contracts. So it's either in the contract or it's not. Olsen concluded on Johansson, which I agree with. So, right here, with that ended what she had to say about Johansson. And I don't know. Is this really stepping up in defense of Johansson? It seems like she was finally put on the spot and asked about it. You know, like finally someone pressed one of these Marvel stars on the situation, because these Marvel stars all appear in different movies. They're all over the press. They're getting interviewed every day, and it seems like no one's really been pressing, you know, the situation about Scarlett Johansson. And it's most likely because a lot of these reporters and people actually get paid by Disney. Like, Disney is a powerful media company, and, you know, if you're not getting paid by Disney, you know someone who is, and they have a lot of sway, you know, in the game here. So I feel like there's been a lot of media silence on the situation. You know, people are nitpicky. People like to report on things, you know. So the fact that this isn't a bigger story is kind of weird. Do you feel me? So the fact that other Marvel stars haven't really been getting pressed or asked about it while they're doing all these different media campaigns is weird. I mean, we have Shang-Chi coming out in a couple of weeks, and I don't think he's been doing the media rounds, and not a single soul has asked him about the Scarlett Johansson situation. So I do think that's weird. So it's finally someone pressed her about it, or pressed someone about it just in general, and she gave a half-assed answer. Although she does say, like, you know, I agree, if it's in the contract, it's in the contract, which that's facts. That's what I've been stating this whole time, that regardless of how you feel about Johansson, regardless of how you feel about Disney, if it's in the contract, it's in the contract, and they have to honor that contract. And from what it looks like to me, it's in the contract, because that's the contract, the same contract that all of these Marvel stars sign. And this just goes further to expose Disney and the fact that Disney doesn't practice what they preach. They push this women empowerment and all these different messages in their movies, but they're refusing to pay Scarlett Johansson. So all in all, I'm happy that someone asked about this. I'm happy that someone finally said something, but I gotta admit, I was expecting more. I thought this was going to be more of a defense, you know, of Scarlett Johansson and breaking it down a little bit more, but this just looks like someone who got put on the spot and kind of tried to dodge the answer, because she's still under Disney contract and she still has many more Marvel movies to come out, unlike Scarlett Johansson, who has now been blackballed and blacklisted from Disney and terminated from all future Disney projects. But I want to know your opinion on all of this, because surely you have one, and all opinions are welcome here. So drop that down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and as always, find some time out of your day to go watch a movie.